And today I want to talk about Judaism. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the, in broad terms, not me growing up Jewish, because I covered that in my previous video, but I want to talk about several elements of Judaism, and I will talk about my own self, my own experience of Judaism, because this is a vlogging channel, and I think you could understand me better. I think it'd be more of a bonding video if I did that. So I wrote down a list here of several elements that are distinctly different from non-Jewish culture. One, encouraged to ask questions. Two, no original sin. It's more of an emphasis on personal responsibility. Three, the Messiah, our concept of Messiah is different than the common concept. Four, it's not as demanding in terms of literal interpretation of the Bible. Five, there's no devil. There's only one God, one deity. And then six, a self-deprecating sense of humor. The humor is more introspective and more of observational humor about humanity. Seven, an emphasis on commandments or mitzvot as a way to understand and bond with our God. So, let me start. This is live stream, people. Okay, so I just switched phones because I'm left-handed. I think I can hold it better. Let me put on my glasses. Hold on just one moment. You may see me wearing glasses more often because I want to get into reading from a script, reading outlines and so forth. So I seem more organized. Okay. The first one, encouraged to ask questions. Now, this is this is drawing from my sense of, my awareness of Jewish aspects and Jewish things. Doesn't necessarily speak for all Judaism around the world, but I think I'm confident this is a good sense of what a typical Jewish response would be. Okay, so the first thing, encouragement to ask questions. And I'll try not to disparage not disparage, that's the wrong term. I'll try not to make this be a contest with other religions. But in Judaism, there's an openness to ask questions. And one story in Torah that's pointed out quite a bit is that Abraham actually confronted God and asked, well, how many good people in I think it was Sodom would it constitute so that you don't destroy the city? And he bargains him down. Bargains, of course, Jews, of course, he bargains. Ha ha ha. No, bargains him down to 10, and then of course God destroys it anyway. But it's that story is pointed to, and also the experiences that Moses had with God. There's more of a communication. There's more of an openness to challenge or to at least probe. Why is this so? What makes this so? Rather than just accepting on blind belief, blind faith. And that's important. In fact, I was reading something, the term translated in English as emunah, the Hebrew term emunah translated into English as meaning faith doesn't mean blind faith. In the context of other moments you see emunah in the Torah, it refers to steadfast trust. Um, so that's very telling. And I should mention the chavrim, the tradition of having a chavrim, a companionship when you're studying. It's encouraged that you study Torah or basically Jewish texts, with someone else, so that you two can discuss the verse or discuss what you two are studying. Um, a second thing, no original sin, personal responsibility. Um, there is, I guess, a sense of a fall, or a sense of a, I don't want to say fall because that implies original sin. The Garden of Eden story, there's a major change in the in humanity. I'm guessing, for this is true of Judaism in general. There's a change in humanity, or the state of humanity, after the Garden of Eden story. Um, there's no blaming of Eve. There's no original concept of original sin. Um, a Jew, I think I speak again. I think I speak for the majority of Judaism. That Jews see a new birth as, a new child, fledgling child, as nearly a clean slate, um, and more optimistic. Um, so there's more emphasis on personal responsibility, which is good. This gets into my personal take on these things. Um, on the one hand, I'm very glad that there's no original sin, because um, you can't just blame something on the devil, or blame it on something. Well, the devil made me do it. No, in Judaism, there's an emphasis on the commandments and an emphasis on education, partly for the fact that you take personal responsibility. Um, you understand what's going on. You can grow. There's a concept, I didn't write this down, but I'll add it here. It's where it counts. Of teshuvah. Oh, hi. Do I like cabbage? I don't know, Annalise. Nice name, by the way. Um, why Paul? Yes, Jewish people. Yay. I don't know if you're Jewish yourself, but thank you. Um, grown man, by the way. Wonderful. Um, Rubik Kiki Toe. The names that you come up with are fun to read. I hope I'm pronouncing them correctly. Okay, back to personal responsibility and teshuvah. Um, as a Jew, you're always able to seek forgiveness. You go to the person that you've hurt, and you seek forgiveness. Now, according to tradition, if you've sincerely, genuinely sought forgiveness from someone and they've rejected you after 3 times, three is a symbolic number. After 3 times, then, as I've heard it from God's point of view, you've done your part. As long as you are genuine and sincere, you've done your part, and God would judge. I don't mean go to hell, but I mean God would judge, or assess the other person for having rejected a sincere, apology and seeking forgiveness and so forth. Um, so yeah, back to personal responsibility. I think I've been pretty clear on that. This is a fun topic. Next one, Messiah is different. Okay, so in Christianity, of course, the Messiah is thought of as a divine figure, related to Jesus and so forth. The actual term Messiah is Hebrew. The Hebrew term is mashach, which means anointed, and it means that you've been that there's a. I think it even refers to dripping or washing, maybe, but it refers to the dripping of oil on the head. Um, that's an anointing. You're anointed for a particular purpose, whether it's to be a priest or be a leader or be, I can't think of what else, anointed for a specific purpose. So, mashach, that's the verb, and then mashiach would refer to someone who has been anointed. So, it's used several times in Leviticus because it's describing the priest, and of course, he's anointed, and the Levites and so forth are no, I think they're anointed anyway. So the term comes up a lot. Um, so I'll go back in ancient times. Um, you know the story of Moses who led the Israelites out of Egypt. He had a special purpose. God selected him for a special purpose, and then Joshua after him, and so forth. And then there were judges, and then kings. A king would be anointed to be a ruler. And then at some point there was a series. You probably already know this, but maybe you don't. Um, Israel had become a protectorate or an occupied zone of, you name it, the Greeks, the Romans, the Seleucids, the, I don't know if Egyptians were in there somewhere, but several groups came in and occupied Israel. So um, about that time, this is about 2,000 years ago, there was a fervor to cast out the yoke of oppression, cast out um, that we're under the rule of some foreign power. It's something like the United States. We were colonies in the United States, we were colonies under British rule. We want our own autonomy and freedom. And if you can imagine that, but add in a lot of religious fervor, that was a sense. So they, about 2,000 years ago, there were, I'm trying to remember the term, there were religious zealots who were doing, from what I've read, what I've heard, there were some terroristic acts to throw off Roman occupation. So there was hope that a Messiah would come. And it's not so much that the Messiah would do everything. And it's vague. It's something that's not brought up. I was brought up reform as a Reform Jew in a Reform congregation. There are 3 or 4 basic movements or sects of Judaism. There's Orthodox, which simply means you live your life. It's all about how you live your life and how you observe the commandments. It's not so much faith alone. It's Judaism is very much behavior and action. So there you have the Orthodox community, and then there's the ultra Orthodox. There are disputes, which one, the ultra Orthodox is part of the Orthodox, but it's extreme. But basically, the Orthodox community sticks much more to the actual commandments in not only the Torah, but in the Talmud and the Jewish canon of not beliefs. That's not a good word. Customs, Jewish customs. Adheres more to Jewish customs, the Talmud and the Torah and Kabbalah and so forth, and ritual and cultural observance, cultural identity. It's very strong. So at the other extreme, there wasn't, as I understand, the term Orthodox didn't really exist in Germany in around the middle of the 19th century. There was a modernist movement, and that became the reform movement, where they didn't want to stand out. Um, oh, from Russia with Love. Oh, no, I know some Russian. Let me guess. Andrew Gorevich. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Zhristov or Christov. Um, thank you. Um, hi. Okay, so the reform movement wanted to modernize, didn't want to stay. Of course, Germany. It's like um, several decades later, they would really come to find out the dangers of this. They didn't want to stay so far apart. They didn't want to be singled out. So there was a movement to modernize. They wanted to reassess modern observance of these commandments. And so they let in English or other translations rather than it all being in Hebrew. So I guess you could liken it somewhat to a Protestant Reformation from Catholicism, the Protestants from the Catholics, vaguely. So then in more modern times, I don't remember when I think this is a 20th century thing, pretty sure it's a 20th century thing. There was a movement that grew up in between the two, between the Orthodox, which followed, these are our traditions, and the modern reform movement. There's a conservative, which would be in between, but it seems to lean towards Orthodox. And although I grew up in a reform movement, reform congregation, I think my beliefs fit best with um, conservative. And I'll say something else, that I don't consider myself a Reform Jew. I don't consider myself an Orthodox Jew. I consider myself a Jew. Just my identity is Jewish. However, there are slight differences in how I um, live my life as a Jew. For example, I don't go through the extremes when it comes to mixing silverware with that's silverware that's touched dairy, for example, with silverware and dishes that have touched meat, so forth. I don't go to that what I would call extreme. Um, I don't wear yarmulke every day. I wear modern clothing. So there's some, and I regard the Torah as not being literally the word of God dictated and so forth. There's some elements that I differ from Orthodox Judaism. Um, so maybe I would be more comfortable in conservative, or at least conservative would match me better. Okay, so interesting question. I'm not gay. Maybe you've seen my Samantha videos, um, or heard me talk about Samantha. I'm not gay. I'm heterosexual. I enjoy cross dressing. I enjoy specific, and that would also that would also be a weird thing to be orthodox in cross dressing. I don't cross dress to be just willy nilly. That's why I call it female impersonation. I enjoy developing the look. Sometime I want to talk about my interest in stage magic and illusion. Um, I enjoy. There's something so attractive in me, so very heterosexual in me about the feminine. Looking at women and so forth. That I think one author put it best as saying, you perhaps you target yourself, like you self-target because you're so attracted to women. You kind of self-target. I'm curious. It's a turn on. I would call myself. I guess the closest would be an autogynephile. Autogynephile. Um, Okay, from autogynephilia back to Judaism. Okay. Um, let me see. Talked about the Messiah. Oh yeah, and I'm curious about Kabbalah and so forth. Back to the Messiah. There's more to it than just waiting for a Messiah figure to come. There are other aspects that Jews hope for. That okay, aside from the Messiah alone, that that the the people who made an exodus across the world, who were forced out, who were kicked out from various countries, would come back to Israel. I didn't put that in there, but I should have. That Israel is thought of as our homeland. No matter where we are, we have at least have a homeland. Um, and I don't want to get into politics right now, but suffice it to say, a Jew um, would recognize Israel as homeland, and the term Zionist, Zion refers to Israel, and Zionist simply means that you recognize Israel's right to exist. Okay, that's as political as I'm going to get right now in this video. Okay, an ingathering of the exiles. Um, Let me see. There would be peace. They know and recognize God universally, and the commandments, the mitzvot, would be upheld and observed. Um, at least for me anyway, especially in the Reform movement. Um, there's not so much talk about what would come when what would be when the Messiah comes. But Jews definitely await the Messiah, and the along with the mitzvot, some of the mitzvot that would be observed universally. Um, some of them would be the um, sacrifices in the temple. So there would be a third temple existing, and there would be sacrifices and so forth, and God's name would be known, pronounced correctly, and so forth. Okay, I think I've talked enough about that. So the Messiah is not necessarily a divine being. It would be somebody. He would be somebody, and I say he because in ancient times it would be a king and so forth. So I say he. Um, would be somebody from the line of David who would be, in my sense, I mean, the way I see it, like a successor to David and then his son Solomon and so forth. Who were both kings of Israel. So it would be a new king of Israel. Um, all right, not as demanding about literal interpretation. Okay. Um, Now, I know I don't have that much familiarity with Islam, although it's interesting, some aspects of Islam, like not eating pork and so forth, um, nicely, nicely jibe with Judaism, in the sense that it's weird if things weren't so, disastrous in the Middle East. Sometimes I think Jews and Muslims could coexist peacefully. I hope so. I really hope so. Um, and that's a positive political statement that I hope that we could live together as brothers and sisters, of course. Okay, back to not interpreting it literally. I can say definitely in terms of reform movement, I'll start with myself, and then I'll talk about the reform movement and then the Orthodox movement. I don't know about conservative. I would consider conservative. Well, I don't know where to put conservative exactly, but myself, I consider the entire Torah and a lot of the Tanakh to be um, written prose, very philosophical, very important written prose that contains truisms that are as true to human nature as if God had put them there in people's minds to write. That's the closest I can express, closest to what I how I can express what my thoughts are. So I don't interpret them literally. You don't have to interpret them literally. That's not the point. You interpret them. You interpret the Torah. Let me explain what the Torah is. The Torah is the first of three parts of the Tanakh. Um, Little bit of history of the Old Testament, the Torah, Tanakh. Um, you have the three parts. You have the Torah, which would be Genesis to Deuteronomy, and then you have Nevi'im, which would be loosely prophets, or they don't necessarily need to be foretelling the future. Prophets are those that communicate messages from God, from a divine source. So, and then you have writings. So the acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, prophets, and Kotuvim, writings, is Tanakh. So that goes from Genesis all the way to Chronicles. And somewhere along the line, the Catholics or the Protestants or whoever came in and changed the sequence of the books, the order of the books in the Tanakh, so that when it came time to write what you would call the Old Testament, and so forth, the order is different, but the books are essentially the same. The meanings you'd have to look at the meanings, the Hebrew and translation differences and so forth. That's different, but that when I say Tanakh, that's what I'm talking about. So I don't, for the most part, for much of it, I don't interpret it as literal. But I think there's a lot of important philosophy in there. And it's fascinating, and that's what I'm covering in the Torah Decoded podcast, and hopefully the forthcoming book that comes out of that podcast. Now, in terms of the Reform movement, I've gone to Reform. I've been brought up in a Reform congregation. Again, there's no emphasis on Moses literally having existed. There's no emphasis on Aaron having literally existed. Um, it's not even relevant in discussions. It's more like these are literary figures. I'm not kidding. I'm not holding anything back. The discussions they have, these are literary figures, and we talk thematically about the stories that they're involved in. Like Moses spoke, to God, through the burning bush and so forth. We talk philosophically about what that means and so forth, and apply it to today. So there's not a literal interpretation. Once you get to the Orthodox, you get to more traditional, mindsets, and you could see, you would definitely see. You would have to see. I'd be very surprised if you don't find people who believe that Moses actually existed and would become angry and become whatever, you know, that these people didn't actually exist. As you would a Christian when you would argue that the people in the Bible didn't, the Christian Bible didn't really exist. But as you move toward more liberal reform, it's more a non-literal interpretation. That's not to say that the Orthodox wouldn't talk in terms of philosophy and themes, story themes. It's just that I would be you'd be less prone to find, let me how do I phrase it? You'd be more prone to find Orthodox believing that these people really existed. In addition to there being important themes to read and study about, philosophies and so forth. I hope that's clear. And then, um, oh, no devil. There's, even though it's interesting, the term Satan or Shatan literally means adversary. Um, that didn't come about in terms of an actual character. Didn't come about until around 2,000 years ago, give or take, like some centuries. Um, And even then, in the beginning, in the book of Job, um, okay, before the book of Job, um, the term was simply a nickname for like a kind of adversary, like an enemy. You know, he stood in front of me. He was obstructing my way, and so forth. That kind of thing. Like with the donkey, the talking donkey, and so forth. So in Job, as I understand it, that was the first time that you come across that there's a Satan character, and then even then, he was part of God's group where um, he was pointing out the faults in humanity as a constructive mechanism. Like, the term playing devil's advocate. That was the role of the Satan in Job and in later on. And then as you get towards Christianity, then there's that's when you get a very different, just like with the Messiah concept, you get a very, very different thing that's not Jewish at all. So ironically, just like with Mashach and Messiah, the term Satan or Shatan does mean adversary, but the concept of what we consider Satan or whatever came very much later. It's not part of Judaism. Um, okay, so and also alongside that, I must say that there's only one God. That's like like those of you who are Star Trek fans, the prime directive in Judaism. There's only one God. There may be puzzling issues about God, what God does, why God does what God does. Excuse me, but there's a steadfast belief there's only one God. Um, okay. I have next comedy style. I'm going to skip that for a moment. I'm going to go to the last three here. Emphasis on commandments. Now, um, commandments is a loose term. There are several categories of commandments. I won't go into them, but basically, I'll call them mitzvot. Now, the term, as I understand it, it comes from tzava, which means bonding. It means bind, like you have a bound connection with God, and you have a relationship. And this is definitely a Jewish concept. Um, it's not that we have these different laws we have to obey or else. It's more like God has given us these commandments, these mitzvot. Uh, we can learn more about God through what He asks. I'll just use the pronoun He. No, I won't. No, 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 no. What commandments God gives us shares with us something about God, the nature of God. We're very curious. Jews are very curious about the nature of God and the nature of the universe. And there's a whole field of text, ancient texts called Kabbalah, that you've probably heard about. Um, Fewer have probably actually taken the effort to study, and it is an extraordinary study. It's fascinating to me, but these texts talk about the nature of the universe, and it's a metaphysical field of study. The nature of the universe and the philosophical, nature of the universe, philosophical nature of God. Um, so we want to understand God better. Just like if you met a new friend and you had these guidelines that you go by, or these rituals, or these routine things, you learn about this other person through those rituals or those routine activities, things you like to do together. Um, so there's an emphasis on commandments. Um, Let me see. The next thing is identity. That identity is inherited. Identity as a Jew is inherited, is more of an inherited, not obligation, not just, oh, I swear to, I convert to Judaism. Although I should say that when you do convert, there are converts to Judaism. You go through a long, steady period, yeah, a long, steady period. Um, and when you seek out a rabbi, should you want to convert, Um, Again, three comes up. I've heard that the rabbi would traditionally turn you away twice and so forth to dissuade you or convince you, where your path in life, say you're a Muslim or Catholic or Lutheran or whatever, your path is okay, or you don't feel that you have to convert, especially for a friend or a spouse or somebody. um, the rabbi will be very careful not to let you just join willy-nilly. It's a very, very life altering, literally life altering change. So um, on the third time, he'll say, okay, um, so you go through study classes, you go through a coursework, study classes. You'll probably be with other people in a class of converts too, as you go through learning the basics. Something like, I guess it's funny the way I can find secular uh, analogies. Like if you're wanting to become a citizen of the United States, you do a lot more study than, unfortunately, a lot of American born citizens do. You learn a lot more about the United States. You pass a test and so forth. And there's a ceremony. You become an official citizen. The same thing in Judaism. You go through study, and then there's a conversion ceremony, and I think that involves a mikvah, dunking in water. Um, but you officially become a Jew. And so you are considered as much a Jew as everybody else. And there's even discussion in the Talmud about that. Okay, before I go to the Talmud a bit and these other texts, I want to talk about actions as being actions and behavior, in some sense, being more a measurement of someone. No, I don't want to phrase it that way. We have behavior and action, okay? And then we also have thought and speech. Well, speech would kind of go with behavior. We would have thought. So, um, we are human. Judaism recognizes we are human. Even ancient Judaism, like in the Talmud and so forth, we are human. So we will have thoughts and so forth. The difference is that whether we choose to act on them or not. And I'm very proud that Judaism does recognize that. Um, Sometimes we don't have control over thoughts that come in. We do have control, or at least unless there's something odd in the brain, we do have control over how we act on impulses, or, we do have control over our external actions. Um, so there is so Judaism does recognize that. So it's more like, um it focuses on the actions that we do, constructive or destructive, good or bad, if we harm someone else or if we help someone else. um okay, now as we come towards the fun conclusion, I want to talk about some groups of texts. I've talked about the Torah and the Tanakh. The Talmud started off, again, about, maybe I'd say, like 2,100 years ago, something like that, by Judah the Prince, part of the Sanhedrin. He was prince of the Sanhedrin, essentially the Supreme Court in Israel. And he wrote down, and he divided this up. He categorized this list he made of common practices. I guess they're common practices or routines in Judaism. He categorized them into six groups. And so then what followed were, okay, so he had the list, and then other writers came in and added commentary to that. And so you may start off with Judah's statement about a ritual or a practice, and then there would be the added commentary starting off with Rabbi um, Achon in the 12th century said that on no, strike that. It would start with a question. It would come it would have Judah's statement as to what a certain uh, routine was or ritual or custom was, and then it would tend to have in the commentary, Rabbi so and so asked, or it would start off asking, Rabbi so and so asked, um, why do we practice this on Saturday and not the rest of the other days of the week? Rabbi Yehoshua answered from the mouth of, meaning he got it from an earlier rabbi, and it then gives an explanation. Rabbi Simone or Shimon gives and said this, and then gives another reason or another elucidation on that, and then the commentary could go on, and then you would have questions posed based on answers. So again, it's like Judaism, going back to what I said before about Judaism encouraging questioning and probing and asking questions, um, wanting to learn more. Education is very much at least within traditional Jewish household. I would say well throughout Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, no matter the household. Um, but perhaps the more orthodox, the more emphasis there is on Jewish education. I guess, yeah, that's where it would be. The reform movement, there would be emphasis on education just in general, but I'm going to venture to say that in more orthodox communities, more orthodox homes, there's more of an emphasis not only just on education, but Jewish education and the Torah and the Tanakh and so forth. And there's the yeshiva school where it's like it's a religious school. You go to Catholic school or whatever. It's religious school. So not that I would really necessarily further compare Catholic school with yeshiva. I don't know that much about a yeshiva, but it's like full time schooling in with other Jews in a Jewish setting. I'll go that far. So um, that's what the Talmud is. At some point, it was bound together: the commentary, and then Judah Judah the prince's initial statements, his list elements were bound together, and then uh, Rashi, who I think was a Jewish rabbi, there were other footnotes added around the pages, each page of the Talmud. Um, so that those are two categories. You got the Tanakh, you got the Talmud, and then Kabbalah, which is a collection of texts dated to somewhere between 2,000 years ago and like 1,100 years ago. And there's a whole history about the development of Kabbalah. Again, as I said before, it's a metaphysical study of the nature of the universe and the nature of God. Very philosophical, very symbolic. Um, then you have various legends told, like the legend of the golem, um, and other legends and interpretations and um, Pasuk. I think that basically commentary, famous commentaries written about the Torah portions, the stories in the Torah. Um, and that's about it. Let me see what we have for time. Yeah, it's about a good time. Okay, so it's less than an hour. Phew. Okay. um, so I want to share with you Jewish humor, Jewish comedy, Jewish style of comedy. It's more self-deprecating, and I think of Married with Children. Although I don't know the extent, how many Jews worked on the show, but Married with Children, especially the first few seasons, seem um, much more related to just like observations about humanity, odd, weird, quirky things that we have to deal with, and finding humor in our faults, finding humor in weird moments of bad luck. Um, so it's very human centered, sometimes self-deprecating. It's very much observational humor about the nature of human beings, um, and very introspective. Aside from Married with Children, um, Jerry Seinfeld, who is himself Jewish, the one who played Elaine, Julia Louis Dreyfus, she's Jewish, and Larry David, who was a partner with, I don't mean a partner in that, I mean a writing partner, a working partner, and a friend to Jerry Seinfeld. He's Jewish and very much Jewish style of comedy. So I wrote down some. There are many famous Jews in entertainment and famous Jews in physics, especially theoretical physics. So in terms of comedy, Don, and I hope by mentioning these, I hope you get a sense of Jewish culture in entertainment. In terms of comedy, Don Rickles, Jack Benny, Rodney Dangerfield, Jerry Seinfeld, and Louis Black and Seth Rogen are, I would say, good examples of Jewish comedy, Jewish comedians. And in music, there's so many to name, but Bob Dylan, um, and forgive me, I forgot his name, but the one who, ironically, just came to me, the one who wrote "I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas," he was Jewish. Oh, Irving Berlin was Jewish. um, we as Jews are very are easy when, I don't want to say very, are easy when it comes to acclimating into modern non-Jewish culture. Okay, so in terms of music, Bob Dylan, Billy Joel, Pink, um, Alicia, I can't remember her real name, but anyway, Pink, um, Gene Simmons from Kiss, Amy Winehouse, Drake, and Paula Abdul. Yes, Paula Abdul. I was surprised, but she's not just Jewish, just born from a Jewish parent or something. She's gone to Jewish congregations, had a rabbi, and so forth. So I tried to pick the ones that were culturally brought up and thought in terms of Judaism. Now, in terms of filmmakers, of course, Steven Spielberg, I would be surprised if you were surprised that Steven Spielberg was Jewish. Stanley Kubrick, maybe some of you might know. Oliver Stone, um, I mean, might know that he was Jewish too, Stanley Kubrick. Oliver Stone, David Cronenberg, um, Mel Brooks, of course, Mel Brooks, Coen Brothers, and Aaron Spelling. Um, and that's about it. So going back to my scripted text here for a moment, if something here resonates, please subscribe, and tell your friends. Hit that like button. I promise I'm going to rewrite this. Going to rewrite this and formalize my opening and closing. Everybody has a formal opening and closing on YouTube. Um, if something I've talked about here or any of my other videos um, resonates with you, please consider subscribing and press. I'm trying not to sound so robotic, but it would really help my channel because I'm a young channel, fledgling channel. Hit that like button and tell your friends, spread the word. You can even spread the word that I'm beginning constructing these podcasts, audio podcasts, to talk about, for example, the Torah decoded, and other topics, and about Samantha, and 80s toys and various different topics. So they each would be a different podcast. Um, And you can also support this channel by visiting my website or website store at vvproductions.media. So thank you for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next one.